our main event, we have Mr. Ray DelMuro here from Fresh Class. Give him a big warm welcome. So we were talking earlier about this picture that you stole from your mom's house. It was a picture of you with some Lincoln logs and Superman on the screen behind you. So tell us a little bit about your early days of Lincoln logs.
To give the story context, my first mentor, I call him mentor number one because I've had like 9, and I love all of them. But mentor number one, that guy knows who he is, right there, marked. Man, there's something about having someone there who is unflinching and telling you, even though there's times I knew he knew I was doing something wrong, but he still told me, like, what do you think you should do? And then I told him, and he's like, all right, go for it. Just let me know if you need any help. And so years after having these multiple conversations and having fallen and grown, one birthday of his, I bought him a book that I thought that he would really like, and I stole that picture from my mom's house, and she got really mad after she found out. It was a picture of me with Lincoln logs at 4 years old, just extremely proud of what I built, like 90% proud, 10% shy. I liked building stuff more than I liked TV as a kid, so they just popped me down, and when it was quiet, they knew that I was working. So I gave that to him because I thought he'd appreciate it.
So you're getting like shoved out of your comfort zone a lot then at this point, huh?
No.
So you said you have about 9 mentors. What are some ways that you've met some of these people, and what was the most like profound thing you brought into your life? What do you think a mentor does for you?
For me, it took me a long time to realize that I wasn't good at everything. And I'm kidding, because I'm really not good at a lot of things. You know, I think that my job is to spend as much time doing my unique talent and what my gift is, which I love creating new things, and I brought some of them to show you today. I always joke around because I made this watch out of my last pair of boots before I moved to sneakers. But specifically, I love how mentors can share how they've been through the mud. You know, half the times it's not just this specific experience that they have been through that fixes the exact problem that I'm having, but more of them just sharing the narrative that they've been through stuff too and overcome it, and then I'll be fine. Because sometimes it's really hard. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what the right answer is, and so you really have to grind to figure it out.
So you went from Lincoln logs, and then you found your way into Coppola, you went mechanical engineering.
I did.
What brought you to that particular path? And what made you choose Coppola as school?
Because they had really good surfing.
Number one priority.
Yeah. And have you ever been there? San Luis Obispo? Oh my God, it's beautiful. We were just there. So Cal Poly's motto is learn by doing. And so they're a school known for their engineering and architecture. So I knew I wanted to build something, but I didn't know what it was yet. And so it was when I was 21 years old, and I think this is the last time in life that I've ever actually physically skipped. But this day I skipped. I bought up my dream car. I saved up for a 55 Chevy, and I was happy every time I got a student loan disbursement, because that means I could buy more car parts.
Exactly what it was used for.
Don't tell my mother. I'm already in trouble with her already. Oh, he thought it was great. He thought it was funny.
And you felt like hot rods and things like that there at your life, right? Yeah, just really flexing that, make your skills yours.
You know, I don't want to say that I like material things that much, but I really love that car. You know, and it was the first time in my life that I built something, because everything before then had just been artwork, you know, a drawing, or, you know, you can't really do much with Legos functionally. But this car could get you from point A to point B, and it was systems of systems. So when I think of engineering, you know, I worked at Toyota right after school, and that's where I learned Lean and Six Sigma, and then I worked for an aerospace company after that. And all engineering is top assembly with sub-assemblies to component parts, right? So it's systems within systems, which is a big way of how I think about making things and how I think about business as well.
That's cool. But then you kind of like took a turn there when you were at an what aerospace company were you at?
It's called C&D Aerospace. So basically anything inside of a commercial aircraft that you can touch is what we made. So the ceiling panels, the lavs, the overhead bins, the PSUs is what you call the stewardesses on, the galleys, the lavs.
Yeah, you started feeling the pinch of like, it's not really like, it's not my jam. I don't want to stay in this forever. So then you took this awesome like 1 year hiatus from like life, I guess. And
I did.
Just traveled the world. So like, tell us all like what made you decide to take that crazy jump? How did you do it? Where did you go? What did you learn?
How many questions was that?
All of it.
Okay, so first one. I had the expectation getting out of school that for me, it was like a sequence of events that I had to get through, milestones, right? You need to get the good job, then you need to make the money, then you need to live in the place and buy the house and get married, and that it was ordinal to me. You know, it was the Western paradigm of if you have the stuff, you'll be happy. And what happened, I always joke around, I call it my quarter life crisis. It's like 25, you know, and I was living in Huntington Beach and I had my hot rod, which I'd spent years building, and then I kind of had a mini internal breakdown more than external. I was just pissed off, you know, because they tell you that you get the job, and I had worked my way up as an engineer to engineering manager, and I was in charge. I was director level below VP in my late 20s for this company that does $1 billion a year, and I was completely just pissed off because I didn't feel the way I thought I'd feel.
Yeah.
It just felt like stuff and words on paper, and I wasn't enjoying what I was doing anymore, and so I knew I had to pivot. And that's when I decided I took the down payment that I had saving up for some real estate in Southern California. And mind you, this is in 2006. So I scored. Because it would have been gone anyways. But I decided to take a trip around the world for a year. And I papered and penciled everywhere that I wanted to go. And I called everyone I could think of and told them I was going and asked them if they want to meet me somewhere. And I'll never forget the day I turned in my letter of resignation to the VP of Ops. And he's like, Ray, he's like, so who hired you away? And they were kind of notorious for walking people out. You know, so once they knew that you were done, they didn't want you to steal any other the talent there. So it'd be kind of like Fight Club, where you'd be walking out and there'd be the guy with the grocery cart, you know, with your keyboard and your box of files. But I just said, hey, I was like, I have to do this. I've made up my mind, and I found someone even better for my spot than I think that I am. And I'd love to train him for you over the next 2 weeks, but if you walk me out, I'm cool with that too.
It's pretty cool of you to do. I've never replaced myself with something before, so.
Well, I really appreciated what the company had done for me. I'd learned so much, and they were fantastic to me. It's just, I needed to leave. I had to leave.
Very cool. So what was your, did you plan this trip out? Did you just kind of like throw a dart at the map and like, that's where I'm going, or how did you plan that out?
So luckily enough, there was 2 weddings that summer in Montreal, and they were both 15 days away from each other. And so I had left the Central Coast to go to Montreal to work on business jets, which I was so excited about. So I get to work in the facilities where they make the aircraft. And so what they do is, if you guys have ever taken a plane from LA that's usually 3 or 4 seats across, they're Canadair. There's 2 manufacturers, Canadair and Embraer. Canadair is Canadian and Embraer is Brazilian. So I was working at the Canadian regional jet manufacturer. They take a plane that fits 90 people in it, and they put the coolest furniture in there to make it for like 9. Like, we did crazy stuff, beds, TVs that popped up out of pieces of furniture. It was fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where'd you go exactly? Where were some of the countries you visited?
So I did Eastern Europe. I really wanted to learn Spanish, so I took Spanish courses in Barcelona for 3 months, which is probably my top 3, because that's usually what everyone asks me next, is what my top 3 places. And it's really different, because if your criteria is like nightlife and fashion, you know, Barcelona is absolutely beautiful. And I'd say that some of the beaches in Southeast Asia are the most amazing sunsets, where it looks like the sky's a kaleidoscope.
Very cool. All right, so when did you decide that you were like done with this trip? And you were going to come back to reality?
You know, I got really stir crazy after a while. It was, I met so many people, and I have this game that I played called Serious Happy Goofy that I'll just walk up to someone and say, hey, you want to play this fun game? It's because I would walk into places and know absolutely nobody. So I walk around my point and shoot, we'd laugh and look at the pictures and then, you know,
How does it go?
grab a drink.
Teach us how to play
Do you want to play it right now? Do you have a cell phone?
Okay, all right.
Okay, here, you have to stand up.
Uh-oh. All right.
Okay, ready? First picture is really serious. You have to look at her.
Okay.
Are you ready like you're mad?
Super serious face. Oh, serious. Okay.
All right, happy? Now we're best friends?
Okay, now
Goofy. There you go. You can try it sometime.
perfect. We love it.
It's really fun at
This
weddings.
is my go-to.
Yeah, you should.
Icebreaker. Cool. So, decided to come back. How did the refresh glass the first thing you kind of started tinkering on when you came back, or no?
No, so the first thing I did is I took a job with my cousin's husband sourcing products from China. And so I'd go over there, I'd vet different companies and different products, and then I'd put them in containers, send them back over here. So I kind of pulled a 180 after that, but
Yeah.
that was the first thing I did.
Interesting. Cool. So you learned a little bit about like supply chain and things like that through that, or?
Oh yeah, the cultural differences are enormous. Enormous, the way that they do business over there, and there's not very much loyalty, I guess is the nicest way to put it. So you really have to vet and make sure that you're going to be getting what you asked for.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right. So for anyone who's sourcing out of China. Anyways, cool. So then you came up with the idea of refresh glass? No? What came next?
So the next position I took was as a Six Sigma consultant,
Okay.
which was really nerdy. And so what we did is we went into hospitals and we analyzed their revenue collection systems to try to get them to recover more of their past due, using algorithms. It was fascinating.
Oh, wow. All right. And so then how did you come up with this idea for refresh glass?
So at the Six Sigma company, I was far too junior to be working there in the first place. But they said I interviewed really well, and because of the resume that I had, so they wanted someone with 10 years of experience, and I had 5. Right, and they thought I'd be a good fit, and they can train me into the position.
So you're saying it's go for your dreams.
Well, what I'm saying is that I kept on not doing things the way that they wanted me to do them because I thought I had a better way of doing them, and I got fired.
Oh.
I did. And it was one of the best days of my life. I mean, so that was probably the second hard pivot. The first hard pivot I've ever taken was quitting my corporate career and going on my trip, and the second one happened that day because I'd never been fired from anything, and I was really down on myself. It was very emotional for me, and I literally went back to my place. I lied down on the couch, and I felt sorry for myself for 10 minutes, and I was like, this is dumb. And so I went to the gym for like 2 hours, and I came back. I was like, I want to start my own business. This is going to be great. That's really how it happened.
Before the unemployment period came in.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so literally, like by the end of that day, I had signed up for entrepreneurship courses at Scottsdale Community College and for bartending courses, so that I knew because I knew I'd have to find a way to make some cash at night while I was hustling, figuring it out during the day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So then, like, what sparked refresh glass? So by the way, this is one of Ray's pieces, and it's a planter, and so like water coming out here, like it's a wine bottle. So isn't that cool?
Yeah, so this is one of the products that I created. So the water actually wicks itself up into the soil. And so soil has a natural saturation point, so the soil will only naturally take in as much water as it naturally wants. I think I said naturally 3 times there. So in the glass, all you have to do to water it is just to pour water in the glass, and then it lasts for over 2 weeks. So for all the people, I mean, I've gotten hugs from random people before saying, I used to have a black thumb and I kept this alive. This is amazing. It's amazing.
So where does the idea come from? And this isn't it, like, really, it was glasses first, right? Like drinking glasses was the first product?
It was. I mean, so this actually works out really well linear. So after I started bartending at Bobby Q's right off the 17, I don't know if anyone's ever been there before. They have really good barbecue, by the way, if you're ever in that hood. So I'm a nerd, so I made a matrix of all the qualities I wanted in a job, like capacity for earnings, you know what I mean? Like, is it fun as hell? You know, can I make stuff? You know, lifestyle, all that good stuff. Oh, dude, it was bad. I think I have that Excel spreadsheet somewhere. And so I had different ideas. I was going to build furniture. I was going to do photography. All of it involved creating in some way because I wanted to take the building part that I had at the aerospace engineering career and combine that with my passion for art. So the way I think about it is I wanted to take the utility and the function, so the left brain logic, combine it with my passion and love for creating an animated response. You know, when something functions, it performs its job. You know, like I always talk about a rotary phone, had zero design. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I recently saw something like, I think it's so awesome when you combine something functional and something beautiful. Like the other day, I got into someone's car and they took off their bracelet and it was their cell phone charger. And then they plugged in the car and then the other end in the butt of the cell phone. And it performed both functions. And I think that in life that we actually want both. And I wanted both. And the question that I left with when I started my big trip was how can I combine the function of engineering with the animated responses of art and help the community at the same time in a business where I don't have to work for other people. Those are the major parts.
Yeah, perfect. I think the first place, so the reason I knew about you, when I worked in a fusion shop, one of our big conferences was at the Fireside. And so I saw your glasses there first. And then I saw them again at Pig and Pickle. This was like this recurring theme of like keeping running into your art everywhere. But how, like, the story of your fresh glass is actually really cool. It's embedded in conscious capitalism. And what, like, so I'm rather, like, new to the concept, but tell us about, like, when you first heard of the concept or when you first decided that was something you wanted to bring into your business.
Actually, Mark introduced me to Scott McIntosh, who has been at the forefront of conscious capitalism in Arizona. And so I hadn't heard of it before, and the book had just come out. So for some of those of you who may not know, Conscious Capitalism was founded by John Mackey, who is the founding CEO of Whole Foods Market, who just sold to Amazon. And so it spoke to me because what they wanted to do is they wanted to combine the heart of a charity with the horsepower of a corporation, which is a phrase that I kind of use all the time because people want both, you know what I mean? And so now that I get to do more public speaking, and I really love working with students because when I started Refresh Class, I mean, I was working out of my garage and I had a 10 by 10 booth at the farmer's market on Central. I was there hustling hours like 65 through 71 on Saturday mornings in my 7-day week, you know, and people were there just selling their bread and making the tamale store amazing. If anyone's ever at the tamale store, I think they kept me alive for a month or two. So yeah, conscious capitalism was trying to combine both of them to helping people do good and do well at the same time.
Very cool. And so in order to get your glasses, you raise them all up in this big, huge truck. It's kind of genius. Like you go around and you get them from restaurants, hotels, and people just give you these glasses, or how do you work that out?
Here, so I actually started collecting them in the back of my 4Runner.
Oh.
my mom would call me on the phone. She'd be like, clink, 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 clink. She's all, you're all in pickups, baby. Like, yeah. And so for the first couple of years, you know, I'd pick up all the bottles in the back of my 4Runner, and I couldn't afford anything near this area, so I was like off of 51st Ave, off of Van Buren, with some really interesting neighbors, you know. I could hear the tuba through the windows, you know, through the walls. They're thin. From my neighbors, it was awesome. But doom, 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 doom.
Still
Anyways,
great.
yeah, exactly. No, so I mean, that first year that I got out of my garage, I quit the barbecue joint and I cashed in my 401k, and I had already spent the rest of the money on my trip, so I was like, screw it, I'm doing this. And I got a 1,200 square foot spot. I couldn't afford both the work location and a place to live, so I lived on the floor for like a month and a half, and I took a shower at the gym. It was cold. I didn't realize it was so cold here in January. It's really cold.
It's actually interesting. So I was reading a Conscious Capitalism book, and that's actually how John Mackey started out Whole Foods, is that he couldn't afford both things either. So he had the store, and then he lived above the store, and would take showers in the laundry room, which was not even if the inspector saw it, it would not be a good thing for him. But so that's interesting. There's some other plans going on there.
Oh, it was crazy. They had this picture at the gas supply store. So in order to make these rims, they have to be melted at 1,500 degrees. And so they make this cool center fire orange color when we're doing them. My crew's doing about 1,000 a day right now. And so back then, I couldn't afford to have the oxygen and propane companies deliver to us. And so every time I went and threw these flammable cylinders in the back of my private vehicle, I had to sign this little waiver, and they had the gnarliest picture of some tiny little pickup truck that had just exploded. And they made me sign this every time, to the point that they all knew me and gave me high fives at some point. They're like, no, you're good. We have it on file.
So you risk your life there.
Yeah, I guess if your windows are closed, it creates some pressure inside, so they make you crack the windows open a little bit.
Which is awesome with 110 degrees outside in Arizona.
Right? Yeah, I couldn't afford AC the first year either, so whatever.
So his acting lines are really cool if you ever get a chance to go down and tour it. He's at Map 6. It's a lot of really great entrepreneurs down there too. You share a space right next to Sacred Wax and Espresso. But it's actually really cool to go in there and look and actually see how it's made. I think he figured out you had to get on a record player at one point, and then it transitioned into you're a mechanical engineer in Kimpton, and you actually made a device that does this now. But it's a really cool thing to see, and I think it's always really cool when entrepreneurs decide to make an actual physical product. There's something about the homemakers movement and actually touching having a physical product come to life, and then having that be something that's sold on store shelves and people can look at it, and I just think that's really cool. So I don't know, there's why did you want to create this physical product here?
I don't like the concept of a commodity, because a commodity is something that's robotic. It's not unique. Sometimes I used to get mad. It felt like years would go by and I didn't realize what was going on. And so for me, the products that we make are special to my team, because every wine bottle has its own story of where the actual glass was made, where it was vinted, where the winemakers poured it, the occasion that it was consumed at. And so there's a lot of variety in our products of the shapes and the colors and the thicknesses and the story behind it, because I wanted to make an anti-commodity, that stood for something bigger, while still being great to use and looking good on the table.
Awesome. And then this whole part of Conscious Capitalism about being aware of your environmental impact, and I think obviously you've taken something that people would just contribute to landfills, and you create it into something that's repurposed and something that we can use every day. So very cool. So what's the low an entrepreneur is? There we go. What's the lowest low that you've experienced being an entrepreneur?
I think it was just really being tired all the time. I didn't realize it until the third year after starting at the farmer's market. I had someone walk up to me and they're like, "Ray, you look so well rested. For years there, you were just like..." And so it was a sacrifice for me. In my mind, it's never been a matter of if, but a matter of when, and that's kind of helped me get through. And I just, micro steps, one more step, one more step, one more step. And I still think that we should have gotten farther faster, but I'm very appreciative of what I've gone through in order to get at least this far. We're going to do hundreds of thousands of glasses this year, and I want to do millions.
Yeah, you have a goal of 10 million bottles right
We
now.
do.
I love it.
We do. We just hit our first million, so we're really excited about that. And the part that frustrates me is I look at the overall statistics of how many wine bottles, like physically, like what's the actual count, and it's in the billions. And so I don't think the way that Refresh Glass can make our mark on the world is necessarily by making that number into recycling all of those billions into glassware, because logistically a lot of it has to do with influencing public policy. And so this is a relevant story. I mean, we were just staying with friends of mine that live in San Luis Obispo, and he works for a solar company. And so it's fascinating what's going on with solar right now, because for the first time ever in some regions of the world, solar is actually more cost efficient than traditional power. So the tide is turning for solar right now, which is super exciting to see. I mean, it's just kind of like how Volvo is committed to making, only electric vehicles, and how the city of Paris in 2040 is committed to having no combustion vehicles in the city. So all these things, it's a long-term play, and so it's happening. So what I have going on right now, and with some of my other friends who are makers, is trying to help educate both the colleges and to try to create policy based around rewarding people who are able to extract these materials from the landfills and generate revenue from them that help the community that pays taxes and do that. So it's a shorter path for me to have global impact, to help educate people on how to replicate what we've done in their own ways, than it would be for me to actually rescue all those bottles. Because what my friend told me, so I said, hey, you must be killing it in Florida and Arizona. He's like, no, it's in Massachusetts. So I said, why in Massachusetts? And he's like, because that's where they have the best rebates from the government. So it had absolutely nothing to do with where the sun was. It had to do with public policy. And so that's going to be a lot of what happens with wine bottles, because some states have redemption values and others do not. And some states have cities who collect wine bottles, and some, like Phoenix, do not. So sometimes it's more of the government and the laws that you walk into than the validity of the idea or the market that you represent.
Is that something that you're involved in policy change, or is that?
That's why I got involved with Conscious Capitalism, because what we're doing now is, there's the early adoption cycle, right? And so early adopters right now are adopting a worldview instead of an ethnocentric view, which is it's a complicated way of saying we accept the whole planet as opposed to USA versus whoever, because with the Paris Accords, which Trump pulling out I actually think is an amazing thing, because the way that everyone else reacted to it is he was actually a catalyst to everyone else rising up more than I think would have happened if we would have stayed in it. So I actually appreciated the drama just for the perspective of the rise that it had and the fact that it did really upset a lot of people. I think in the end will be a really good thing, because the governors and the mayors were all saying, Commander-in-Chief, you did what you did, but I'm still going to live up to those standards, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah. So then, what's the hype been on the horizon? What makes you get up and do everything?
I just love when someone comes up to our team and just says, this is my favorite thing to use every day, whether it's my favorite planter or my favorite carafe and glass set, which I brought you one. So here you go. I made you a gift.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I love it. It has no last thing you want to do. I love it.
So here, open it. I even got you some water.
Love it.
I thought you might get thirsty.
Start up crying. I love it. Thank you.
Would you open it?
Oh,
We
yeah.
can show everybody.
Yeah.
So I have a new product development problem. So it's hard to market hundreds of products well. And so
This is like a bedside table deal.
here you go. Exactly.
I love it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Here's some water.
Perfect.
Easy.
Okay,
Look at that. Yeah, go for it.
Like full effect here. What you got? It actually holds the lid.
Exactly.
some Q&A from the crowd here. These are really serious questions.
All right.
And sometimes I'm the one that makes them not rapid fire.
Let me get my serious face on.
Yeah. So, all right. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
Sushi or tacos? Really? Beer?
I didn't say I drank it.
Sushi or tacos?
Sushi.
Favorite app?
Favorite app?
Yeah.
Afterlight.
What's that?
It's photo editing.
Okay. Very cool. Check
I
that
love
out. Favorite OS, like Apple or PC?
I'm a Mac guy.
All right. Perfect. I'm that girl. So, all right. Favorite holiday?
Whichever one's closest.
So, what's your favorite car?
55 Chevy.
Your favorite vacation spot?
Koh Phi Phi, Thailand.
Very cool. Favorite book?
Favorite book?
Yes.
Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell.
Favorite movie or TV show?
Favorite movie or TV show? I'm trying to stay away from TV. Can we go back to the book one?
Yeah, let's do another book.
Let's do another book.
Book.
My second favorite book is probably New Economics by Deming. He was the guy that kind of created Lean.
Okay.
Yeah, he's my hero. I read Benjamin Franklin's autobiography once a year. That guy was like a ninja. He taught himself languages at lunch, like literally. The guy was so cool.
That's awesome.
Love it.
I'm gonna have to check all of that. All right, what's your favorite music artist?
Favorite music artist is probably, I don't know. I like so many.
Yeah. What's your favorite genre of music?
Genre?
Yeah.
Probably,
What are you jamming out to when you're cutting all of this?
it's probably skater punk that I used to listen to.
It's probably good. This is the worst song we listen to. I can play it for you right now. All right. Your go-to karaoke song?
Careless Whisper.
Anything you collect other than wine bottles?
Anything I collect other than wine bottles? Anything I can, like snowboards, surfboards, anything I can put one foot in front of the other.
Very cool. You make a lot of things too. Like
I do.
You go into your studio and there's like chairs or.
Yeah, I'm trying to make my entire office handmade.
Wow.
So yeah, I made my desk, 2 chairs. Only gotten disqualified from one contest.
Oh, only one.
Yeah.
Why?
It was for Patron, and I still have a huge chip on my shoulder about this because I spent a lot of time on this damn chair. But it has 26 different Patron bottles, and the chair is actually also a bar. So I made custom glasses for it, both margarita glasses and shot glasses. And I got disqualified because they said I was in the industry, so.
Oh.
But it's in my office. I sit on it.
Any unusual skills or talents?
I can whistle with my fingers really loud.
Yes, you can.
You looked at me, I was like, okay.
Your top strength in business?
My top strength in business? New product development, probably.
All right. What was your first job?
My first job? My first job was flipping pizzas at Woodstocks in Coppola, San Luis Obispo.
Nice.
Yeah.
What profession other than your own would you attempt?
Would I attempt? I think I would be a teacher someday.
What kind of teacher?
Teach people how to make stuff. I mean, there's this, well, no, there's this store up the street that I absolutely love called Practical Art. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. And so I love what they do because they have over 120 local artists that make products that aren't, I mean, they're actually everyday useful products. So they have people that knit caps, people that make pens, cutting boards, buttons, something you can wear, something you can use, knives, cutting blocks, our glassware is there. So my favorite question for the owner, Lisa, every year is always, I always ask like once a year, is she runs all of our farmers market booths now, is I ask her, hey, out of all the artists that are here, the 120 people, how many of them can actually do their craft full time? And the answer is always less than 10%.
Yeah. Is it their side hustle typically?
Usually, I mean, a lot of the people just, they have this creative itch and they just love making that thing, and all their family and friends who they've given them to at Christmas tell them like, hey, you should sell these. You know, I mean, I think everyone's kind of seen the scenario where, hey, I love making this, or someone who does like painting, you should sell those. And sometimes if you get far enough along, you're used to making a certain amount of money and you have a mortgage and you might have kids or whatever the scenario is. And so fiscally, sometimes it's just not possible to live the same lifestyle. So it's a timing issue in addition to access to resources, knowledge, network.
All right.
There's a lot of pieces.
So,
Get them young.
looking for Christmas gifts, practical art is a good place to go.
Absolutely.
What's the best compliment someone can give you?
I use your product every day.
Love it. A cause you're passionate about.
Conscious capitalism. I think it's going to change the way that people think about things. Have you ever met Brian Moore from Y Scouts by any chance?
No.
So he has a company.
I'm part of Valley Leadership.
Oh, really? Okay, good. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. So Brian lives here in town. He's a good friend of mine. He also helps run Y Scouts with Max Hansen, and what they're doing is they're finding ways to recruit for large C spots or like corporate level positions, where they're not only doing skill and experience alignment, which is your resume, but they're doing value alignment. Because what they've found is that people who are value aligned will stay longer, which decreases your HR costs and training costs, and they'll be more effective because they believe more in what you're doing.
Yeah.
So conscious capitalism, it's still the head and the heart type of thing, right? Whereas the experience is the logic and the heart is the value alignment. It's figuring out ways to show businesses that by valuing and combining the two together, that the businesses will actually make more money.
All right, 2 more questions and we'll go to Q&A.
Go.
Who are 5 people alive or dead that you want to have dinner with?
Oh, wow. MC Escher, he was the Dutch artist that drew the hands of the hands during the hands.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh, he was my favorite as a kid growing up. MacGyver. Is this fictional or not?
Fictional, whatever.
Is the 18 one person?
Alive or dead? I mean, it's like fictional is kind of a mix between those two.
All right. I'll take MacGyver. I'd go with Leonardo da Vinci. He was a stud. Benjamin Franklin. And I'd probably go with Elon Musk.
Oh, yeah. I would think so, too. Absolutely. One thing on your bucket list.
One thing on my bucket list?
Just one.
Me and Donovan saw Guns N' Roses in New Zealand earlier this year. That was a blast.
Awesome. So that's been crossed off.
It has.
Something that hasn't been accomplished yet. Like the number one thing at the top.
At the top? I'm going to pick something random. I think I'd want to fly a helicopter.
Yeah.
It looks really hard.
Terrifying.
It's like playing the drums with like very lethal consequences. I mean, there's like foot pedals and something for both hands. It looks difficult.
Awesome. I never heard flying a helicopter described that way, like playing drums.
Well, think about it. Yeah, it looked hard. I was in it once. He was like,
All right, time for Q&A. So Amy is going to go and she's going to pass around the mic. So who has any questions? Perfect. Maybe in the front here.
Hey, Ray.
hi.
I'm Tommy. I'm a sophomore at ISU. My question for you is, what were you like at school? Were you that person that just wanted to stay in the corner and build stuff, or tell me?
In high school or college? College? I'd say I wanted to be friends with everyone, but I was still semi-shy. I liked surfing more than I like most people. They had this cool machine shop that I'd stick myself in all the time and just immerse myself, and if I could find a project to make something, I would. That was my favorite place on campus, 121. Be stuck in there all the time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is one thing
I believe that purpose-driven business will become the norm in the next 50 years. I think that it's kind of sad how a lot of times strife causes people to do the right thing that they wanted to do anyways. So right now I'm fascinated, and I'm not a doomsday personality, but between nuclear threats, global warming, and world population, we're kind of hitting a pivot point right now as a society that we've never hit before. And until I believe it's going to be the entrepreneurs that are going to be the ones who drive the innovation that gets adopted by schools and changed into policy by government. And I think it's going to happen faster than people think because it makes more money. And that's the sad reality of the reason why it's going to happen, but it's going to happen because companies like Zappos, Southwest Airlines, Container Store, Whole Foods, Patagonia, and these are a lot of the people who are in the conscious capitalism segment are proving that they can outpace their competitors by treating their employees and their other stakeholders that are non-traditional, like the community and the environment, and the employees to a large extent better to get better financial results. So I think it's going to happen sooner than people think. It's going to be awesome to watch.
Hey man, my name is Steve.
Hey dude.
Great. Would you say that the conscious part of Refresh Glass is the leading reason people want to do business with you, or is that a nice secondary?
That's a really good question. I've struggled with that for a long time. So what happened is I went from, I see it kind of as in stages. I went from materialism as an engineer to having the green worldview and to wanting to help everyone. It was kind of more of a charity thing. I want to be a traveler and I want to make the world a better place. And that's where I started with Refresh Glass, because when I first started selling, I was like, hey restaurant, my value proposition is we can make the world a better place if you buy our glasses that are twice as expensive as the clear Libby ones that you normally use, right? But that's not compelling enough because they're responsible for their P&L to their owners. So specifically to answer your question, I think the value for Refresh Glass is that most people that we know don't really need stuff, right? They have glasses at home, they have shoes, they have kind of the basics of what they need. What they need is something that makes them feel like a part of something bigger. They need a story in front of their friends that makes them look cool, and they need something to show other people when they come over their house, like, here, check this out. It's by this company. We love what they do. We believe what they stand for. They look really great with my tea set or whatever, you know what I mean? And they're really reasonably priced and they can custom engrave for you. So what I've done in the past few years is I flipped it, right? And so instead of talking to people's conscience first, I talk to their P&L first. And then the consciousness is the kicker that helps me beat my competition. Because there's one other company that's importing glasses that look like mine from China, but we're the same price. So in terms of being lateral competition, if we're going head to head with them, whether it's a restaurant or a big corporate gifting order that wants custom engraved, do you want the Chinese mass-produced clones, or do you want the ones that are helping the United States environment, that are made in the USA? You know what I mean? That we have a story that's connected to, that we can send to you, that you can share on Facebook and show to your friends to tell them that you believe in something bigger. And so I'd say it's the frosting, not the cake. Thanks.
Going back to your point of Travis a little bit, I'm just curious, that you're a traveler, however long it was, what are some of your shifts in mindset, conclusions and things you learned along the way that still influence you?
I think the biggest one is that it's not always about me, and so I'm preparing to speak at the Conscious Capitalism CEO Summit in a month in front of 250 CEOs that do $5 million a year or more. And so I've been racking my brain. And so the slot that they asked me to speak for is called The Big Idea. And so I'm like, what is my big idea? You know what I mean? And so
I don't know, technically model is kind of a big idea.
it is, but I almost feel like it's not big enough. It is a big idea, but the big idea is that the model can be replicated. over and over again, and we can teach other, whether it's students or people who quit their jobs, how to do this. But something fascinating that has been twirling around in my head over and over and over again is the pronouns me, we, and us. I had to look it up again, but they're all actually singular pronouns, right? So me is singular, right? And us and we are singular plural, right? First person. And so what this means to me is I did a major pivot when I started marketing differently, because from my travels is when I first understood the worldview, because there's something that if you ever meet a real traveler, they have this sense of, if they call it Gaia in books, right? Or it's a worldview. They have like 10 different names for it, but that everything's interconnected, interconnectedness, oneness in Buddhist philosophy, you know, and so you see things repeated over and over again, but once you see it in 5 different places, you're like, okay, there might be something to this, right? And travelers are some of the best people, just like environmentalists, at figuring how everything goes together, and so they really inspired me. A lot of the people that I met that always picked up their trash and then always stopped to help other people is that it wasn't just about them, but then they ended up being happier people because of it. So now what I want to do is to try to help replicate what, and I'm a very small example of it, please, you know what I mean? But like a lot of the other businesses that I get to speak in front of in a month are massive. Like Thrive Market's going to be there, Dan Pink is speaking, Southwest Airlines, Home Depot, half the people I listed just because I remembered it from that website. But it's really, I mean, so the question that I always ask my clients is, hey, I know you're really busy, so I put the time aspect in it. If I can provide for you a solution that makes you money, that generates animated responses for your employees and your customers, and helps the world all at the same time, is that worth 15 minutes to you? And so it's a loaded question, because who doesn't want that, right? But what I'm doing is I'm taking head, heart, and soul and combining it into a question, right? So the money, the animated response, and soul I call community, is being more than just me. But you can replicate this question in a million parts of your life. You know, you want food that's delicious, you want it to be nutritious, and you want it to be responsibly sourced. Same thing for a car. You want people to be interesting, you want them to be smart, and you want them to have values with other people. And so those head, body, and soul just repeats itself over and over and over again, and the way I like to give it to other people is in their version of me, we, and us. And that's why I don't put my logo on stuff that much anymore, because they want to see their last name. We've tried both. So we were in all the Whole Foods in the Western U.S., and people don't buy hard goods at grocery stores. So it's really situationally specific. When we're just in the box, we've struggled in the past. And so we've done a lot better online. And so we do sell heavily to Amazon, because we have a vehicle there to tell our story and to show our points of uniqueness to justify the prices that we ask for. They'll usually buy 2, because our persona, like our client, is normally female between the ages of 25 and 55. And so what'll usually happen is a husband or wife will be walking through a shop, and they'll go, hey, honey, these will be great for that wedding. You know, I want some too. So then they'll buy 2. You know what I mean? And then they'll take them home, and they buy the first time for the story and that they're cool. And then when you use them, they're actually thick and heavy, and they feel great in your hands, and everyone has a different hand, or likes the lighter one, or likes this color, or that feel, or this thick rim. Then one becomes their favorite, and then that becomes their go-to glass at home. And then they show their friends, and then they end up buying them as gifts for other people. So it's not a very short life cycle, and it's really hard to track, but just from stories over the years, we know that most of our clients do repeat purchase. Yeah, not normally. We do a lot of corporate gifting. We just sent 1,000 glasses to Texas A&M's president because she's going to give them to their VIPs for the first football game that's coming up. You know what I mean? Or I think it already happened. You know, and then we'll do other deals where we sell the real estate agents who have closes every month. We'll custom engrave the last name of the buyer on the 4-pack to create high margin, consistent revenue that's also fast cash, which are the three that I think of is the speed, the margin level, right? And how much they order, how frequently they order. That's a really good question.
This is the last question. Make it good, Patrick.
So we talk about systems within systems, and then we also talk about replicatable business models. I'm just wondering, is there a certain time where I kind of stuff becoming super prevalent? And then also, is there anything that's helping you stay on that concept?
I love the systems and systems because I'm an engineer and it just makes sense to my brain. I recently learned a ton about marketing in the past 2 years, last year, and it really is about creating inbound leads that are warm, you know, as opposed to someone getting too cold or having never heard about you before. And that's why content online, they call it, right now it's been called edutainment. I recently was able to sit at a workshop with the guy who runs the Golden State Warriors Facebook campaigns. Facebook actually goes to him to ask him what changes he wants them there. Yeah, it is Dennis. You know Dennis? Oh, I love Dennis. See? She knows who I'm talking about. He's an all-star. So, edutainment's the big thing right now. And so it's not about you hard closing them every time they see your content. It's about you getting in front of them 5 to 10 times, right? Them enjoying what you're offering in terms of their life, in terms of their me and their we, and then they'll choose to buy, as opposed to you having to hard close them and have your CTA, you know, be that catchy and appealing is not as important as it used to be. It's about content creation.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ray.
Thank you, Christina.
Everyone give him a round of applause.